The person I built is different, fundamentally different. This person doesn't trust words without watching actions. This person doesn't believe promises without seeing follow through. This person doesn't open up quickly or easily because opening up to the wrong person cost too much last time. People meet me now and they say I'm cold, guarded, hard to reach. They're not wrong, but they don't understand why. They don't know that coldness is carefully calibrated self-protection, that guardedness is intelligence learned through pain, that being hard to reach is a feature, not a bug. I don't apologize for it anymore. I used to. I used to feel guilty for not being more accessible, more vulnerable, more immediately trusting. I thought something was wrong with me for needing to observe people before opening up to them. For needing consistency before offering depth. For requiring proof before giving trust. But I've learned that those requirements aren't signs of damage. They're signs of wisdom. They're the immune system my psyche developed to protect itself from people who mistake access for intimacy and presence for commitment. Cut it. Let me tell you what I learned from you that I wish I hadn't needed to learn. I learned that love without consistency is just chaos with affection attached. I learned that someone can care about you and still damage you, not because they're cruel, but because they're reckless with your emotional safety. I learned that good intentions don't prevent harm when someone doesn't have the self-awareness or stability to follow through. I learned that you can deeply love someone who is fundamentally incapable of providing what you need. And I learned that recognizing that incompatibility doesn't make the love disappear. It just makes staying impossible. That last lesson was the hardest. Because leaving someone you still love feels like betraying them and yourself simultaneously. Your heart doesn't understand why you're walking away from someone you care about. Your heart only knows attachment, not compatibility. Your heart doesn't care that someone makes you anxious more than they make you peaceful. Doesn't care that you've started losing yourself in the effort to keep them. Doesn't care that the relationship requires constant emotional labor just to maintain baseline stability. Your heart just wants them. And you have to override your heart with your mind, with your self-preservation instinct, with the part of you that knows love alone isn't sufficient for a healthy relationship. So I left. Or maybe I stayed too long and finally got pushed out. Either way, the ending wasn't clear. There was no final conversation where everything made sense. No closure where we both understood what happened and why. Just a slow dissolving of something that was never quite solid to begin with. And in the aftermath, I had to rebuild myself from scratch. Had to figure out who I was without you, without the identity I'd built around trying to make you stay. That rebuilding process taught me things about myself I didn't want to know. It taught me that I have a pattern of staying too long in situations that hurt me, that I confuse intensity for intimacy and anxiety for passion, that I'm willing to sacrifice my peace for someone else's approval. I don't trust my own perceptions when someone I care about contradicts them. These aren't easy things to accept about yourself, but accepting them is necessary if you're going to stop repeating the same patterns with different people. I had to learn how to be alone without being lonely. Had to learn that solitude is not the same as isolation. That choosing yourself is not the same as being selfish. That setting boundaries is not the same as building walls. I had to learn how to sit with discomfort without immediately trying to fix it or escape it. How to feel my feelings without letting them control my decisions. How to trust myself again after spending so long doubting my own reality. And slowly, gradually, I started to solidify into someone new. Someone who carries the lessons but not the wounds. Someone who remembers what happened but isn't defined by it. Someone who's cautious but not closed. Someone who knows the difference between protecting yourself and isolating yourself. This new person doesn't fall easily, doesn't trust quickly, doesn't give access to their inner world without watching how someone handles the outer layers first. This new person observes patterns over time instead of believing promises in the moment. Watches how someone behaves when they're not trying to impress, notices how they handle conflict, disappointment, stress, pays attention to how they treat people who can't do anything for them. listens to how they talk about their ex-partners, their family, because all of that tells you who someone is far more accurately than what they say about themselves when they're trying to win you over. This new person has requirements now, not preferences. Requirements. Non-negotiables that don't get compromised for chemistry or potential or how good something feels in the moment. The primary requirement is consistency. I need to know that the person I'm dealing with today will be recognizable tomorrow, that their feelings don't change with the wind, that their commitment doesn't fluctuate based on their mood. I need someone whose words and actions align more often than they contradict, someone who says what they mean and means what they say. I require emotional availability. Of it is willingness to show affection when everything is easy, but capacity to show up when things are difficult. Ability to communicate when they're struggling instead of withdrawing. Willingness to work through conflict instead of avoiding it until resentment builds. Someone who can be vulnerable without making their vulnerability my responsibility to manage. I require respect for my boundaries. I need someone who understands that no means no the first time, not after I've had to repeat myself multiple times. Someone who doesn't push to see how much they can get away with. Someone who recognizes that my boundaries exist for good reasons and honors them, even when they find them inconvenient. I require someone who takes responsibility for their impact, who can apologize sincerely when they hurt me, even if they didn't mean to. Who doesn't make excuses or get defensive when I express that something they did bothered me? Who understands that intent doesn't erase impact and is willing to adjust their behavior based on how it affects me? These aren't unreasonable requirements. They're basics. Foundation. Good. The minimum necessary for a healthy relationship. But I've learned that what should be basic is actually rare. Most people aren't consistent. Most people aren't emotionally available. Most people don't respect boundaries they find inconvenient. Most people don't take responsibility for their impact without getting defensive. And once you realize that, once you see how uncommon basic emotional competence actually is, you stop being surprised when people fail to meet even low expectations. That realization is both freeing and isolating. Freeing because you stop blaming yourself when relationships don't work. You recognize that incompatibility isn't failure, it's information. You understand that some people simply don't have the capacity for what you need, and that's not a judgment of their worth as humans, just an acknowledgement that they're not right for you. But it's also isolating because it means you'll be alone more than you're partnered. Because you're no longer willing to settle for relationships that drain you just to avoid being single. Because you'd rather be alone and peaceful than coupled and anxious. People don't understand that choice. They see me single and assume I'm broken or bitter or afraid. They don't realize I'm just selective. I'm not closed to connection. I'm open to the right kind of connection. The kind that adds to my life instead of requiring me to shrink it. The kind that feels stable instead of chaotic. The kind where I can relax instead of constantly managing someone else's emotional state. I'm waiting for someone who's done their own work, who's dealt with their trauma instead of making it my problem to manage, who knows themselves well enough to communicate clearly about what they want and need, who's secure enough that they don't need constant reassurance, who's stable enough that I don't have to walk on eggshells, who's present enough that I don't have to guess where I stand. I'm waiting for someone who understands that depth takes time, who doesn't rush intimacy or try to force connection before trust has been established, who respects my pace instead of making me feel guilty for being cautious, who sees my guardedness as wisdom instead of damage, who understands that the walls I have exist because I'm protecting something valuable, and those walls won't come down until I trust that what I'm protecting will be handled with care. I'm waiting for someone who can handle my intensity without being overwhelmed by it, who can match my depth without being intimidated, who appreciates my intelligence instead of feeling threatened by it, who values my independence instead of trying to make me dependent, who wants a partner, not a project, who sees my complexity as interesting instead of exhausting, I'm waiting for someone who proves through consistent action over time that they're trustworthy, who understands that trust isn't given, it's earned, who's patient with my process instead of demanding I speed up for their comfort, who recognizes that rushing me will only make me retreat further. And if that person never comes, I'll be okay. That's the real shift, the fundamental change from who I was to who I am. The old me needed relationship to feel complete, needed someone to validate my worth, needed partnership to feel successful. This me knows I'm complete already, knows my worth independent of whether someone else recognizes it, knows that being single is not a failure state, it's a neutral state that's infinitely preferable to being in the wrong relationship. This me has learned how to be happy alone, how to build a full life that doesn't revolve around romantic partnership, how to have meaningful connections through friendships and family and community, how to find purpose in work and hobbies and personal growth, how to create stability and peace and joy without needing someone else to provide them. That doesn't mean I don't want partnership. I do, but I want it from a place of preference, not need. I want to share my life with someone, not depend on someone to make my life feel worthwhile. And that distinction matters. It changes the entire dynamic. When you come to relationship from wholeness instead of emptiness, from abundance instead of lack, from choice instead of desperation, you attract different people. You make different decisions. You tolerate different things. You also leave differently. When something isn't working, you don't cling to it out of fear of being alone. You don't stay too long trying to fix something that's fundamentally broken. You don't sacrifice your peace for someone else's potential. You recognize incompatibility early and exit gracefully, instead of waiting until resentment and bitterness have poisoned everything. That's where I am now. In this place of cautious openness, available but not desperate, hoping but not expecting, willing to try but quick to leave if what I find doesn't match what I need. Some people will call that cold. They'll say I'm too guarded, too quick to leave, too unwilling to fight for something. They're wrong. I'm not unwilling to fight. I'm just selective about what's worth fighting for. And I've learned that you can't fight for someone who won't fight for themselves. Can't force someone to be ready when they're not. Can't love someone into changing when they don't see why they should. So I protect my peace fiercely now. I guard my energy carefully. I choose my battles wisely. I know the difference between a relationship that's going through a hard time and a relationship that's fundamentally unhealthy. I know when to be patient and when to walk away. I know my limits and I honor them, even when that disappoints people. Not closed, just aware. Aware of what I need. Aware of what I won't tolerate. Aware of my worth. Aware of my patterns. Aware that love alone isn't enough if it comes without respect, consistency, emotional availability, and genuine care. I'm not the person you met anymore. That person was too accommodating, too willing to sacrifice themselves, too afraid of being alone. This person knows that being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel alone. This person won't shrink to make someone else comfortable. This person won't ignore red flags because the chemistry is good. This person won't stay somewhere they're not valued just because they're comfortable. And if you ever wondered what happened to the person you knew, the answer is simple. You happened. Your inconsistency taught me to require consistency. Your emotional unavailability taught me to demand availability. Your disrespect of my boundaries taught me to enforce them strictly. Your lack of accountability taught me not to make excuses for people. Your unpredictability taught me to value stability above all else. I don't hate you for it. I don't even resent you. You were probably doing the best you could with what you had. The problem was that your best wasn't enough for what I needed. And instead of accepting that incompatibility and leaving, I stayed too long trying to make it work, trying to fix what was fundamentally unfixable, trying to earn from you what you were simply incapable of giving. I learned. And learning changed me, made me stronger in some ways, harder in others, made me more selective, more discerning, more protective of myself. Made me someone who doesn't gamble with their peace anymore, someone who doesn't stay where they're not truly wanted. Someone who knows the difference between being loved and being convenient. This is who I am now. Take it or leave it. I'm no longer performing or pretending or contorting myself to be what someone else needs. I'm no longer sacrificing my authenticity for acceptance. I'm no longer negotiating my boundaries for connection. I'm no longer available to anyone who can't meet me where I am. And if that means I'm alone more often, so be it. Because I've learned that loneliness is temporary, but recovering from the wrong relationship can take years. That being alone feels better than being with someone who makes you doubt yourself. That peace is more valuable than partnership with someone who disrupts it. That protecting what you've built matters more than letting someone in who will tear it down. So yes, I'm different now. Colder to some, harder to reach, more distant. But I'm also more authentic, more boundaried, more stable, more at peace. And I wouldn't trade this version of myself for the one you knew, even if it meant having you back, because that version couldn't survive. This one can, and survival matters more than sentiment. This is who I became to outlast what we were, and I'm okay with that. More than okay. I'm proud of it, proud that I survived, proud that I learned, proud that I changed in ways that serve me instead of destroy me, proud that I'm no longer the person who would accept what you offered just to avoid being alone. I wasn't born cold. You made me this way. And now I'm making something better from what you left behind.